So Carmen Vitali joins me, NFC North reporter, Chicago Bears writer for FoxSports.com.
That's me.
And it's almost like we planned this out ahead of time, Carm, because you have a big story hitting FoxSports.com today, Monday. So if you're hearing this Tuesday, you can go back and find it, FoxSports.com and the Fox Sports app. It is about a Bears draft prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's really not, because it's about Caleb Williams. That's what I'm getting to. It's about Caleb Williams.
Half of it is about Caleb Williams,
who we can assume will be a Chicago Bear.
Yeah.
And what you did was you went and actually looked at what we think the Bears offense will look like under new offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. And like, okay, cool. You heard your name called, Caleb. You got your draft cap. What does that mean? And so I'm curious, what did you learn about the Bears offense and what we can expect to see when Caleb Williams actually gets to work in Chicago?
I watched a lot of Seattle's offense for this piece, and I talked to a bunch of coaches that have actually played against Shane Waldron about what this offense does, what it does well, what makes it unique. And I came away kind of a believer in the Chicago Bears and what they're doing. Not only do you have this number 1 overall pick opportunity, and Caleb Williams presumably has the opportunity to come into probably the best situation a quarterback taken first overall has ever come into, because Ryan Poles has curated this roster. It's a really good landing spot. You've got some veteran weapons.
Maybe the best ever spot for a number 1 overall pick.
That's what I'm saying. And potentially a top 5 defense to lean on, all these wonderful things. But the biggest thing that's, I think, going unnoticed and what I haven't seen is what Shane Waldron brings to the table. So that's why I decided to go, watch it. I watched a lot of Seattle tape. And what I came away with was a pretty simplistic offense, very player friendly, ton of, mid-zone up front in their run scheme, a lot of quick game, play action that utilizes tight ends to set it up, multiple tight end sets, in fact, to set it up. But it's based off of like 4 main plays and then builds from there. I kept running into the same phrase every time when looking this over and looking at Shane Waldron's offense. And the phrase was, there are guys that can call plays, and then there are guys that can call games. Shane Waldron is the latter, and there is a very important distinction there, and it's not something that Chicago had last year. So it got me really excited about it.
That's a bar, by the way.
It's a total bar.
Calling games, not plays.
Right.
So, well, you mentioned there's 4 core plays.
Yeah.
What are they? Like, what can I expect to see?
Mid-zone run to the left, mid-zone run to the right, bootleg to the left, bootleg, naked bootleg to the left, naked bootleg to the right.
So this is an offense where we can expect Shane Waldron is going to have Caleb Williams on the move somewhat reliably. And I don't mean that as if to say Caleb is going to run for all of these yards, but using his athleticism to get him in space, get him away from pressure. And presumably, if you're bootlegging, that's often, I hate to call it an easy read, but like a more simplistic read for a quarterback.
Yeah, everything starts there. And I had actually a coach put it to me really well that has played against Seattle now the last couple of seasons. And he said so many people, when they're setting up play action, because there's a huge play action component to Shane Waldron's offense, so many teams, when they try to set up play action, they set it up with runs that they don't actually run in real life. Like a team will try to show power and they don't actually run power. So the defense is like, we know exactly what you're doing. Shane Waldron will absolutely run exactly what he's showing you he's going to run. In some cases, as the clock is winding down in a shootout on 3rd and long, he's going to run the ball. The quote from the coach, it's in the article, he said, the only guy that's ever had the balls to do that against us has been Ben Johnson, Detroit's Ben Johnson. He's never seen anybody else be able to run it against his defense, which is really funny. So it adds to this, there's not a lot of predictability, which allows it to stay simple and just add kind of all this window dressing. So it's very easy to grasp in the very beginning, and then you go from there. The system evolves as the season goes on. It evolves within a game, in fact, but it allows you to stay very unpredictable despite the fact that it's only coming off of like 4 plays.
Which I think that feels like such an in vogue aspect of NFL offenses right now,
Sure.
where I mean, going all the way, like Sean McVay got notoriety for doing this when he first got to LA.
Where was Shane Waldron first a coordinator?
The Los Angeles Rams?
Yeah.
That tracks. Basically, it's just running the same stuff out of a bunch of different looks.
Right.
I mean, that is oversimplifying it. I'm sure.
Completely.
I'm sure the Chicago Bears are going to run more than 4 plays this year.
They are.
But it's like the core concept of what do we do really well and how can we make that look confusing? I think you see that a lot with the Detroit Lions as well. I'm curious if running the ball is going to be such a part of this. And we know DeAndre Swift signed in Chicago. He's actually like their first signing.
Which often that was the splash of Chicago.
You'll often see like the priorities that teams set in free agency sort of show you what they think they want to do. I'm curious.
It all makes sense now.
How do you feel about the Bears' offensive line if that is to be a calling card at the start of Caleb Williams' career?
The Bears have also invested resources in the offensive line. You have not one but 2 veteran centers now to be brought in for depth. You have Ryan Bates and Shelton, and they're making strides in that area. But what was so good about Shane Waldron's system is that in that mid-zone scheme, it thrives off double teams. So it actively seeks out double teams for offensive linemen and sticks to them. In fact, it can almost do that to a fault, whereas if you're trying to do some things post-snap and adjust, if the defense adjusts to what you're doing, and there's not a lot of post-snap options you have because you're supposed to stay on your double team. But what that does is it really helps out the offensive line, and he utilizes tight ends to do this. The way that Shane Waldron utilizes multiple tight end sets is very unique, while also not being unlike what Kyle Shanahan does in San Francisco, except Kyle Shanahan does it with multiple running backs. Shane Waldron likes his tight ends for that reason, and it's because they can act as extensions of the offensive line on top of being threats in the receiving game.